Okay, start it now.
Good morning, everyone. We're just going to wait another minute or two here before we get started. Welcome to all of you. I'm just waiting for another couple panelists to join us and we'll get going here. Oh, here they come. All right, we'll get things going. We still have another panelist or two to join. They'll join in time for their section, but we'll get things going here. So hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name's Erin Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Nova Scotia Association of CBDCs. Today, we're going to learn a bit more about the Caribbean Development Bank, the CBD. But before we get started, I want to give you a bit of background on this webinar series. I know many of you were with us last week when we did the overview of IFIs, but for those of you who are new, I do want to take a moment to give you some context of how this came about. So my organization, the CBDC, acts as the project proponent for a number of export projects, like trade missions and export training. So it made sense for us to offer an in-depth look at IFIs. As we worked through the planning phase for this webinar series, our main objectives, they're to provide you with an overview of what IFIs are, how they work, and what you need to know about working with them. We've already done the overview kind of piece last week. Today our session is on the CBD, and we've got two other webinars coming up over the next 2 weeks that will focus on the World Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank. Hopefully you can join us for those. You've already registered. If not, you can go on and afterwards and register for those two upcoming webinars. I also want to start with a couple thank yous. These webinars were organized with the help of Paula Green and Arturo Mena, two of my favorite consultants. Their expertise and support were invaluable, so thanks to both of them. And the funding support for this webinar is made possible through the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency. And we're really pleased to have Craig Williams on the line with us from ACOA. And I'll ask Craig to introduce our speakers in a moment. But first, just a couple housekeeping items. We have a number of speakers on our agenda today, but we've left time at the end for questions. We'd ask that you use the Q&A function for the question period. If you do prefer to verbalize your question, just pop a note in the chat so that we can unmute your line from our end for that to happen. The session is being recorded, and we will be sharing a copy of that recording, as well as any slide decks that are done during the webinar. So that'll go out by email later on. And there'll also be a survey that will come back out to you guys afterwards. We ask you to take a couple minutes to complete that. It really does help us in planning for future webinars and events. So Craig, you could introduce our first presenter.
Thank you very much, Erin. And thank you, Erin, and to the Nova Scotian Association of CBDCs. You guys make this possible in order for us to be able to execute this. You guys are the boots on the ground for this project, and we greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Want to also say belated happy birthday to Erin. Erin turned 29 again yesterday, and we just it's an opportunity for all just to show our appreciation and thanks to Erin. We hope you make it to 100. Want to welcome everybody here today. This is a great opportunity for Atlantic Canadian businesses. We've put together a group of individuals from the Caribbean Development Bank that are going to share their knowledge and experience with us to help provide insight and opportunities within the Caribbean Development Bank. So we're excited about this. We're delighted that that these experts in their fields have come forward and volunteered to be able to be part of this and to share their knowledge. We're very fortunate. The very first person who's going to speak to us is a colleague of ours with the Global Affairs Trade Commissioner Service out of Kingston, Jamaica. Tammy Braywith is also the PSLO. I beg your pardon? Is out of the Bahamas. I'm sorry, Barbados. Barbados. Was that what you said?
Yeah, it's Bridgetown, Barbados.
Yes, Bridgetown, Barbados. I'm sorry. And she is the IFI officer. So she's the conduit between the Canadian Global Affairs Canada and the Caribbean Development Bank. We frequently utilize and draw on her expertise and insight into that organization, and as well as her responsibilities in the High Commission in Bridgetown. So thank you and welcome. Tammy's going to speak to us on the Trade Commissioner Service and how companies can use the practical function as a conduit to IFIs. Tammy, over to you.
Thank you for that introduction, Craig. And before I start, I think I can point out, and it's probably obvious, that we here in the Caribbean are a bit sensitive about our identity. One of the things that we've seen over the years is people mistaking Barbados for part of Jamaica. So that's one of the sensitivities for us here in the region. Are you hearing me well, Craig?
Yes, there's a little bit of a delay between everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Okay, so good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I've been asked to share with you today some of the ways in which I, as the Liaison Officer for International Financial Institutions, can assist you when you're interested in IFI-funded projects in the Caribbean. Just before I delve into that, though, let me first provide you with a bit of context by saying that the trade section here in Bridgetown, Barbados, there's a total of 13 islands. Apart from Barbados, we're also responsible for St. Martin, both the French and Dutch sites, as well as 11 members of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, including Anguilla, British Virgin Islands, Guadeloupe, and Martinique, which are actually associate members of that intergovernmental organization. That's the extent of our territory, but as the IFIs cover the entire Caribbean, sometimes projects on other islands do cross my desk, and in those instances, I put you in contact with colleagues who are best positioned to assist you based on those other islands. I should also mention at this point that of all the islands we cover, only Barbados is a member of the Inter-American Development Bank. So most of our IFI related work is actually related to the Caribbean Development Bank. Having said that, I'll now look at a few specific ways in which we assist Canadian companies pursuing IFI projects in the region. In keeping with our general mandate as trade commissioners, we can introduce you to qualified contacts in the region, assist with market access issues, and provide assessments on your potential and target markets. Our IFI focus, though, takes all this a step further as we endeavor to make it easier for you to work in the region. Identifying specific projects that might be of interest to you is one of our primary tasks. It's essential then that Canadian companies reach out to us to make us aware of their expertise and interests in the Caribbean so that as opportunities arise, we know to make direct contact with you. Having said that though, we do work closely with colleagues across Canada and with the private sector liaison officer network, of which Craig is a part. And we work with those people to publicize opportunities in the region as well. However, even with that being the case, obviously, if we are aware of your company, your areas of expertise, and what you're interested in doing in the region, then we have the capacity to get information to you a lot sooner, as opposed to having to use our colleagues and the PSLO network as a conduit. Obviously, we appreciate their assistance, but we can get the information directly to you in a more timely fashion if we're aware of your interests. The next area where we assist is through our relationships. We frequently say that, say to clients that the Caribbean is a relationships-based market, as people often like to know who they're doing business with. Prior to the start of this dreaded pandemic, we would always encourage clients to visit the region whenever possible. But that's the luxury now that doesn't exist in the same way that it did prior to COVID-19. But I don't think that because of the difficulties, the region is any less relationships based, but certainly it has taken, the pandemic has impacted that in such a way that, excuse me, that the relationships have to be approached in a different way. So you might not be able to be physically present at the moment, but we still do encourage you wherever possible to build those relationships and also to use us. And we will capitalize on the relationships that we have to provide you with assistance in any way. That assistance can take many different forms, as obviously companies have different needs, just as projects have different requirements. But as you would appreciate, having eyes and ears on the ground can be crucial. So I often ask clients to view us as just that, your eyes and ears on the ground. And with that in mind, we try to ensure that we do whatever possible to keep our fingers on the pulse of things for your benefit. But once again, to stress the point that we would like for you to reach out to us and let us know about your areas of expertise and your interests so that we can do this in the best possible way. As we're now talking about relationships, I'll mention just one. We have quite a few, obviously, that are beneficial to our Canadian clients, but there is one in particular that I think I would want to single out today. And that is our relationship with Canada's alternate director to the Caribbean Development Bank. I believe he has joined us for this session today. That is Matt Straub, who has been here in Barbados with us for a number of years, I think either 3 or 4 years. And we have forged a very strong relationship with Matt, who himself has several relationships within the CDB and beyond. That through our relationship with him, he taps into those relationships to help us to serve you better. Matt has been a critical part of our IFI related work over the past several years. So I think it would be remiss of me not to mention him specifically. Matt also has an in-depth knowledge of the inner workings of the CDB. So certainly we have relied on him on many different occasions to work with us, to equip us with the knowledge that we need to help us to better serve Canadian companies. We also actually have relationships with members of the CDB team themselves, and we leverage their knowledge and expertise to bring clarity where needed on specific projects and on the bank's policies and procedures. I hope that my friend Doug, who's the head of procurement at the CDB, won't tell you about how frequently I pester him for information on projects and the policies and procedures on the CDB, but I certainly try to maintain as good a possible a relationship with him and his colleagues to position the Bridgetown OLIFI as best as possible to serve Canadian companies. I think you'll find that as you pursue IFI funded projects in the region, it is advisable that you include local expertise on your project team. And this is an area where we have frequent requests for assistance from Canadian companies. We therefore try to maintain a diverse network of local contacts that we can tap into to recommend local partners for Canadian companies when those requests are made. So just as recently as 2 weeks ago, I assisted 3 different Canadian companies that were looking for local partners to include on their project teams for IFI funded projects. So this is an area where we find it's more difficult for you to be able to do this on your own, particularly if you don't have experience in the region as well. So that's one of the critical functions that we perform on behalf of our Canadian clients. I'm sure the CDB would also attest to the benefits of having local expertise on your project teams. So, wherever possible, we work with you to identify suitable local people. Another frequent request that we have from companies pursuing IFI work in the Caribbean is for assistance meeting members of the CDB. We facilitate this in a structured fashion through trade missions and other pre-arranged sessions, and occasionally on an ad hoc basis. What years of experience has taught us, though, is that it is often better for our clients to speak to the executing agencies. Obviously, not because the CDB isn't aware of what's required for the project, because they definitely do, but being that the executing agency is going to be the one to ultimately choose who they want to do this work on their behalf, we find that is often beneficial for our clients to have direct interaction with them as opposed to only with the Caribbean Development Bank. Ultimately, they're the ones who are going to contract you if you win the project. They're the ones that you're going to be working with closely for the duration of the project. So we do recommend that companies, with our assistance, meet and engage with the executing agencies. Based on the nature of your query, we will advise you as to whether we think it's better for you to be in contact with the CDB or with the executing agency, so you can rely on us for that type of guidance. Obviously, we don't seek to prevent your interaction with the CDB, but rather to direct you to the most appropriate contact. I think you will appreciate as well that there are so many companies that are interested in working with the CDB. From our perspective, and that's just the Canadian companies, the CDB obviously deals with several others. So certainly It wouldn't serve anybody's best interest for us to refer everyone to the CDB when they come. There are certainly some queries that I can address for you. There are some that the executing agencies are best to address. And where we find that there's definitely need for the CDB to be engaged, we do that. But we try not to make the process burdensome for them. So where we can assist and where we can find others to assist, we will do that for you. We certainly will facilitate it. And will include the CDB, the introduction to the CDB where that's absolutely necessary. So I've found over the years, and I've worked on this IFI file for 15 of my 17 years with the High Commission. I've found over the years that those are the critical areas and the most commonly occurring queries that we get from companies. Those are the areas I think where we really bring our value added to clients. Also taking into consideration that the Caribbean isn't necessarily the easiest market to work in. You have a series of very small islands with as many differences as there are similarities, and sometimes it's difficult to stay on top of them all. So we found that in order to get them through the IFI procurement process seamlessly, clients have been approaching us for the areas of assistance that I just mentioned to you. And that's why I've been focusing, why I've focused specifically on those things. I want to say, however, just as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, that obviously different companies have different needs. So we are not going to be dismissive of any needs that you have. Certainly the trade office in Barbados cannot do everything for everyone, but we certainly try to do as much as we can. So I encourage companies to reach out to us. When you need assistance, just reach out to us. We won't be able to do everything, but in instances where we're unable to provide you with assistance, we will find someone who can. So, don't be timid when you are interested in working in the region. Don't hesitate to let us know the type of expertise that you're looking for, the type of assistance that you need. We will assist, or we will find somebody who can. And just before I wrap up, it would be remiss of me not to mention that all this is possible because of the support and assistance that I get from my direct supervisor, the Senior Trade Commissioner, who currently is Georges Lemire. I do believe that he's with us today as well. Georges has been even more supportive than Matt on the IFI and other files that we cover. So you have a very strong and well-integrated team working for you here in Bridgetown. We have good relationships with the Caribbean Development Bank. So I just want to say, please reach out if you need that assistance. Reach out if you need an overview of what's going on in the market. We are willing and able to assist and are looking forward to opportunities to do that for you. C'est tout.
Thank you so much, Tammy. You said that it's difficult dealing in the Caribbean because of the dispersed nature of the jurisdictions. There is some of that is true. However, when you find who you're looking for, it's always a pleasure in the gracious manner and the ease of doing business when you contact the people you're looking for. So thank you very much, and we're certainly fortunate as Canadian companies to be able to have yourself and Georges Lemire on the line and in Bridgetown working on our behalf as a conduit. Thank you very much. Next, it's my privilege to be able to introduce a speaker who's going to introduce the CDB to us and specifically give us an overview of the procurement process. Mr. Douglas Fraser is head of procurement at the Caribbean Development Bank. Mr. Fraser has over 20 years of experience as an international procurement specialist. He holds an MBA in strategic and procurement and full membership in the Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply. Douglas, want to welcome you. We look forward to your presentation, and if everybody could now please welcome Doug Fraser, we'd appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Craig. You can still hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Wonderful.
Doug, just before you start, I just want to say, when you're speaking, over your left shoulder, there's a little plant in the background that looks like the top of a palm tree, and it's kind of blowing back and forth. Really, it's distracting. Only in that I'm only imagining that is a palm tree. Anyway,
it is. It is actually a palm tree.
Oh, is it?
Okay. A household palm tree, but
okay.
Well, let me start by thanking the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency and also the Nova Scotia Association for CBDCs. I can see I'm going to mix that up with CDB very quickly. And of course, our colleagues and friends at the High Commission of Canada. We're also very grateful for these opportunities because we recognize that without the private sector, none of our projects are able to proceed or succeed. And Canada has been an important provider of particularly consultancy services, but also goods and works over the course of the history of the Caribbean Development Bank. What I'm going to seek to do is share my presentation. If you'll just bear with me for one moment. All right. If you could just confirm that you can see the presentation. Yeah. Okay, great. So as Craig said, I'm just going to give a very quick introduction to the bank and the procurement under the bank. There's a lot more information on the website, which gives a little bit more of the detail. So just to introduce the bank turned 50 last year, so we've been around for a while. We're the only multilateral development bank solely focused on the Caribbean region. And as you see, we have a number of objectives, seeking to contribute to the economic and development progress of our countries and to promote economic and regional integration. And you'll see that we have currently 28 members, 19 of those are borrowing member countries, and we have 9 non-borrowing countries. One, of course, which is Canada, which is a key member of the bank. So which areas do we focus on in terms of sectors? You're going to hear a lot more about this in a few minutes from some of my colleagues. Key sectors for us include transportation, and that covers areas such as roads, bridges, ports. There is a certain amount of work we've done in the air travel sector as well. And William is going to speak to us about that shortly. He's also going to speak a little bit about water and sanitation, which is another core area for the bank. We also work in the energy space, and given the situation in the Caribbean, renewables and energy efficiency is particularly important. The region is very much reliant on imported fuels, fossil fuels, and has very high energy costs. So that's something we're seeking to focus on, and you'll hear more about that from Chris shortly. We also work in the social sector, promoting and developing the education space in our borrowing member countries and also regionally. And beyond that, we also work in social protection. This is things such as social safety nets, which has been particularly important, of course, during the COVID period, and in the agricultural space. And my colleague Martin is going to give a little bit of an overview of that sector. And the other area we work is private sector development. And this is particularly on lending through development financial institutions in our borrowing member countries to meet micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. So there's less of a procurement aspect to that directly, but that obviously provides important concessional funding into the countries to grow the MSME sector. As Tammy mentioned earlier, the bulk of our funding is in the form of grants and loans to recipients, primarily public sector agencies, and they in turn are responsible for managing the projects and the procurement. So you'll see at the top of this screen the flow between the recipient and the contractors, suppliers and consultants, being entities such as yourselves. Our role is essentially to ensure the funds are used for their intended purposes and that procurement and contract management complies with our procurement framework. So we have a number of options. For our higher value, higher risk contracts, we'll review the procurement at the critical stages as it proceeds. So that would be at the bidding document stage, the evaluation report, the contract. For those lower value, lower risk contracts, the recipients will continue with the procurement and we will sample, we'll take a sample of contracts to look at after award. There is actually a recourse for the private sector also to come directly to the bank when things are not going as they should be, and I'll come back to that a little bit later. Just to say that we have a new procurement framework that was approved by our board in the summer of 2019, and we're seeking to promote the use of best international procurement practices which deliver value for money and the highest standards of integrity in order to provide the intended development outcomes in a timely manner. A little bit harder than it actually is on paper, of course. The procurement framework is formed of a policy which is approved by our board, and this establishes the applicability of the framework, the core principles and matters of eligibility, which I'll mention shortly, and the roles and responsibilities of the different parties involved in the process. And then there's the procedures which operationalizes that framework, and there's far more detail there about the different selection methods, the steps involved, and what our role is in terms of oversight, and as well as details of the complaints system that applies under our framework. And then we have standard guidance notes and bidding documents and forms of contract. The good thing is, for those of you who work with other IFIs, we seek to harmonize as far as possible to lower the transaction costs for our clients, but also for yourselves on the private sector side. So the eligibility to participate. As we looked at the pool of countries previously, you'll have noted that our pool of member countries is much smaller than some of the other development banks. And that actually means you should face less competition in principle than you would with some of the other banks. So how does the eligibility work? So firms have to come from CDB member countries, and that should be their principal place of business, and they should be, as far as reasonably can be determined, majority owned by member country interests. We don't have restrictions on subcontractors and consultants and team members. And state-owned enterprises must be legally and financially autonomous to participate. We don't have any restrictions on the origin and source of goods anymore, which we once did. Individuals, where we're seeking individual consultants, or the projects are seeking individual consultants, need to be citizens or bona fide residents of member countries. Firms that are suspended or sanctioned by the bank for prohibited practices are ineligible to participate, and we're about to launch a new sanctions regime, so there'll be a lot more information about that on the website shortly. And for our private sector operations, we have no country eligibility restrictions. So a little bit quickly, how and where to identify opportunities. As Tammy said, before the formal procurement process commences, it's recommended to build the relationships with the key governments in the region. We have country engagement strategies on our website, so you can see broadly in each of the member countries, the borrowing member countries, where we're seeking to intervene and what types of projects we're seeking to do. In terms of the formal process, once our board approves a new project, you will find on the website a procurement plan and the general procurement notice for each project at the front end. So this will set out the key contracts that will be awarded, when they're expected to go to market, and the selection methods that will be used. And then for goods, works, and non-consulting services, there may be a requirement for pre-qualification, particularly for those larger, higher value type requirements, or we may go straight to an invitation to bid. And for consultancy services, be this for firms or individuals, requests for expression of interest are sought again on the website. And if it's for firms, then only those that are shortlisted will be invited to submit a proposal. And where will you find these opportunities advertised? As I mentioned, you'll find them all on our website, which you can filter by country, by sector. You'll also find them on the UN Development Business site. And they also have to be advertised in the national press. For opportunities that fall below the threshold for international advertising, you will only find them in the national press or an official gazette or free or open website used by the country in question. But we know you're all busy people. We know you're not just tracking CDB opportunities. So one facility that may be of interest is we have a weekly newsletter, which you can sign up for on the website through the procurement section. And then you'll get a regular update of all the current opportunities. And of course, you're going to hear a few more about Pacific opportunities from my colleagues in a few minutes. Also for consultants, we have a register of consultants. There's a link here, or you can go through the procurement website. This is for firms and individuals. It's not mandatory to be on the register to participate in procurement, but it's a source we do tap and share with the countries when we're looking for particular services. So again, if you haven't signed up, I would encourage those who are interested to do so. Just to conclude, we know procurement doesn't always run smoothly. We know there are problems. We know some of the countries have capacity constraints. So what should you do if you're not getting the right answer or you're not getting any answer at all? Well, in the first instance, queries should be directed to the recipient who's executing the project. And then if you're not getting responses, please escalate it to us. You can complain directly to the bank at any point if you have concerns about integrity related matters, prohibited practices, and you'll find dedicated reporting channels on our website. We have an independent office of integrity, compliance, and accountability who deals with those independently away from the operations area where we all sit. And if you're not getting a suitable response from the recipient, or you need to complain about the recipient, then you can come directly to us at the bank. And you'll find, as I said earlier, the full complaints procedures as an annex to the procurement procedures, which sets out exactly what information we would expect to see and how you can structure your complaints. The other thing to say is you're entitled to a debriefing where you're unsuccessful. Now, we believe this is important so that you can take from that experience and integrate that into future bids and proposals. So I've done a very quick run through who we are, what our procurement framework looks like. And at this point, I think we're going to dive into some of the more detailed sectorial information. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague, William Ashby, to talk about some of the work that they're doing and the opportunities that they have in the Economic Infrastructure Division. Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas. Greatly appreciate that. You raised some very, very valuable points. You know, I am a subscriber to your weekly newsletter that gives a profile of the contracts that are, or the tenders that are let. Very insightful. So it's something worth for our companies that are on the line to go into the website following this and have a look at that and see about subscribing just as a practice, maybe for a short period of time, to see the value of the information, the types of contracts that come out, how they're laid out, and the types of information that they look for. So thank you very much for that. I think your very first slide kind of set the tone for all of the presentations, whereas you've brought in specialists in each one of those areas, so that's great. We want to welcome William Ashby next, the portfolio manager, who's going to talk about economic infrastructure, operations, geographic coverage, and opportunities. Mr. Ashby is the portfolio manager in the Economic Infrastructure Division of the Projects Department at the Caribbean Development Bank, where he leads the team responsible for technical assistance and appraisal activities for new economic infrastructure investment projects. So over to you, Mr. Ashby, and we're very pleased to have you here. Everyone, please welcome.
Good morning. Can you see my screen?
Perfectly.
Yeah? Okay, great. Let's see how that goes. All right, there you go. It's moved on, right?
It has.
Great.
Frequently, there's a little delay.
Okay. All right. So Economic Infrastructure Division, EAD. We are responsible, as the name suggests, for the preparation and appraisal of all economic infrastructure projects. And I'll, in a second, just show some of the examples of what that means. Some of the work we do involves technical assistance. We do sector studies and things like transportation, water, and urban development. We are also responsible for providing immediate response and rehabilitation support to our countries under our disaster management strategy and operational guidelines. And we look after the fiduciary management of projects in EID as well. So the main sectors of our operation, as Doug mentioned, a lot in transport, roads, airports, seaports, and so on. Energy now sits fully within EID. So you'll hear from Christopher in a moment, and Chris is also now within EID. They look after renewable energy and energy efficiency, water and sanitation, and so on, as I said. To kind of give a picture of the distribution of financing towards the various sectors. So up to the end of last year, you would see in all the financing CDBs provided, transportation and communication has been a major recipient of about 24% of the funds approved by the bank. Energy, water, and so on, about 11%, pretty huge. And social services and infrastructure, about 19%, since the bank was established in 1970. Last year, transportation took the lion's share, really, about 54% of the financing approved last year. And transportation, I guess, would also present itself in some of the other things that are captured as multi-sector and other, and also in some of the social infrastructure and services as well. So that's a pretty big chunk of funds in that area. And also water and sanitation, last year about 10%, but often in recent years a good bit more than that. So we talked about some of the profiles of our transport sector projects and the nature of some of the work. So things we've been doing included airport modernization, helping countries with feasibility studies and designs and so on for whether it be road or airport or seaport projects. And similarly in water and sanitation, running the full gamut, looking at institutional strengthening and capacity building of utilities. In many of the countries, the source of water is surface water, so watershed management plays a big part in that. and other things that impinge wastewater management, and water supply tends to be the big bulk of the work that we've been doing. Though this year, my colleagues have been engaged with stakeholders across the region, looking at really how we can strengthen the situation with regard to wastewater management in the Caribbean. So I'm just going to scan over some of the projects for which there are procurement opportunities in which you might be interested, and I'm going to cover them by country. So first, I'm going to look at Antigua here, and we've got a project for Barbuda Energy Resilience that was approved in 2019. This really followed from the 2017 hurricane season, the need for this. It's a project funded through the UK SIF, which is a special fund supported by the government of the United Kingdom to the tune of about £300 million across 9 of our member countries. So this particular project involves the components you see on the left, and I'll generally scan through them quite quickly so I don't go over my time by too much. So you'll see all of the information presented on the screen. There will be some infrastructure works, including undergrounding of sections of the distribution network, and the opportunity for some goods supply and installation, hybrid solar systems on key public buildings, some consulting services opportunities, engineering and construction related services, and capacity building and project management. Those are the components actually, but the opportunities which remain available are shown on the right. So the civil works for undergrounding, the goods for the solar systems installation, and some electrical work for reconnection. And the last 2 are international competitive bidding opportunities. Also on Antigua and Barbuda, we talked about these projects coming out of the 2017 hurricane season. So this was a rehabilitation and reconstruction loan, and there are some international competitive bidding opportunities here as well in roads and bridge works. The total funding for that project from CDB was a loan of about $28.8 million US, and we will share the presentation so you'll see the details of these opportunities when you get that again. In the Bahamas, we've got a streetlight retrofitting project ongoing there. We've had such projects going on in several of our borrowing member countries. And the one contract that is still available there is for the collection and disposal of used street lights. And that's one for international competitive bidding as well. Other components there had included the supply and installation of LED lamps to replace old sodium and mercury vapor lamps. Last year, the bank approved a package of financing for the Philip Golson Highway in Belize. There was a grant from the UK SIF, because the UK SIF is all grant funding, of about 14.3 million pounds sterling, and that was the equivalent at a time of about 18.6 million US dollars. So that combined with a loan of about 34 million US and some counterpart contribution from the government provided the funding for this project. So the works for this were already tendered, but some procurement opportunities remain as well. And you'd see that project was about 125, or is about 125 kilometers of roadway. But there are useful opportunities that still remain the development and implementation of a community and schools public education program. Since when we've got these major road projects going through several communities and so on, we can't just do the road works and be done with it. There are often a lot of other things that have to be done in order to achieve the successful outcomes of these projects. And in Belize, we've been doing a lot on road safety. So this project also includes components which help to build on that sort of work that's been happening in Belize. There's also a consulting services opportunity for the development and implementation of a livelihoods capacity development strategy and action plan, because that road traverses a number of vulnerable communities. There is concern about trafficking in persons, as well as looking at opportunities to build more sustainable incomes for residents in some of these communities. So that TA will help with that. Belize again, Seventh Power. This is about providing an underwater cable for this supply of electricity to Key Calker on Belize, and we expect that opportunity should materialize during 2021. That was a loan of about 6.8 million financing that particular project. Also out of 2017's hurricane season, there was a rehabilitation or reconstruction loan for the British Virgin Islands. And we've got about 3 international competitive bidding opportunities likely to come up this year. As you see, this project, this funding was actually approved in 2017 itself. So it's taken a while for some of these things to actually happen. But this project has been under active implementation, and so these are opportunities that are quite likely to arise this year. The construction of the reconstruction really of a ferry terminal, the West End Ferry Terminal, rehabilitation of the Magistrates Court building, and rehabilitation of the government's central administration building. Now, also under the UK SIF, so for the next 2 projects that I'll mention, the technical assistance work, in fact, probably the next 4 projects I'll mention, the technical assistance work is still ongoing, i.e. the consulting services for the feasibility studies and designs are still underway. So, but we expect to appraise this project later in 2021, and the procurement opportunities for the works and the other components, as I said, that are likely to arise when we do these road projects, those will become available later in 2021. So the project will include the upgrade of about 18 kilometers of main road between Louvière and Grand Bay. In Dominica as well, also funded under the UK SIF, there's a water sector strategic development project, and that's looking at the improvement of water supply to several communities in Dominica and the rehabilitation of one wastewater management system. Beg your pardon if you can hear that. Let me try to get rid of that. Great. Great. So this, as I said, looking at water supply and wastewater management in one community in Dominica. So overall, the grant funding for that is going to be about £24 million sterling, and that's likely to be about the ballpark for the total financing of that project as well. Grenada, similarly, we've got a water project and a road rehabilitation and improvement project under preparation in Grenada as well. The water sector project, UK CIF, about 11.9 million pounds sterling. So we expect water and sewer mains replacement works to come out of that later in 2021. And for the road project, which is the Western Road Corridor upgrade, just about 10 million pounds sterling there. And that is a road about 25 kilometers long. And again, road improvement and rehabilitation works. This is a road that is along the coast, the west coast of Grenada. So it's in a location that's quite susceptible to landslides and that sort of thing. So all of our projects would involve looking at climate risk and vulnerability assessments, in addition to the environmental and social impact assessments and natural hazard assessments that are part of the normal course of doing projects for CDP. Now this one, Linden to Mabura Hill, was approved last year, at the end of last year, and it's the largest amount of funds towards any one single project the bank has ever approved at a time. So the total project cost for that's about 190 million US dollars. So there will shortly be a roadworks opportunity, international competitive bidding coming up, and consulting services opportunities for project management. As for Belize, I mentioned a while ago, this is a similar sort of thing and needs assessment, capacity building, and grant assistance for small and medium, well, not micro in this case, small and medium enterprises, and strengthening of axle load control also in Guyana. That's kind of a big issue in a lot of our countries, important for sustainability of the road network. Sea and river defense resilience. This is an old project in Guyana, but there's still a few opportunities here. International competitive bidding, stone revetment construction. If you're expert in this, there's a lot of opportunity for this sort of work in Guyana. There are not a lot of contractors who have the capacity to do this, and they're very interested in expanding the market with regard to the number of contractors who work there doing this sort of work. So you can look to participate in that, and the contact information for the project coordinator is shown to the upper right of the screen as well. Mentioned streetlight retrofitting. So we've still got an opportunity in Jamaica for streetlights and smart controllers in a streetlight retrofitting project there. And that's using the procurement procedures of the company, Jamaica Public Service Corporation. Jamaica, we've got a rural water supply program that was approved at the end of last year. There are no specific activities set out here yet. This project is still really being designed. So under the same bucket of financing in the program, the studies, design, and works and so on will come out of that. So we don't know what those works and goods opportunities will be as yet, but you can stay tuned, and later in 2021, this project, which is being looked after by the Rural Water Supply Limited in Jamaica, should present some useful opportunities for consultants as well as contractors. Millennium Highway and West Coast reconstruction in St. Lucia. This again, a UK CIF funded project, and which was approved in 2020. The works would already have been tendered, but there are opportunities for consulting services for a road sector policy and strategy, road safety awareness, and again, like the other two, consulting assignment for enhancing socioeconomic and livelihood impact. Six Water View Fort. So again, an older project from 2014, but several opportunities here that would be of interest still. One for the supply and installation of a SCADA system. And in this View Fort section of the network, consulting services for watershed management and public education and awareness, as well as for the design of watershed check dams and riverbank stabilization. So those are two useful opportunities that are going to come up. The public education one is going to be by consultants qualifications. So that will be, those consultants would be invited to participate in that opportunity, but the other one would be by quality and cost-based election. So you'll see that advertised. This is one in St. Vincent, just two opportunities that are likely to be international competitive bidding here. Again, these come out of a series of rehabilitation or reconstruction loans to the government over a period of time. So we've got two road-related contracts that are likely to be tendered this year. Maroon Hill to Zenga River Bridge and Windward Highway Union River Bridge. Also in St. Vincent, Sandy Bay, Sea Defense Resilience. So this was being financed by a loan of 13.5 million. So that would be the main part of the financing. And the main part of this project is Sea Defense works to about 730 meters of shoreline protection, storm revetment works. So that's yet to be tendered, and that will be international competitive bidding. On to Suriname, where there's a lot of work going on in the energy sector for us. So in 2016, that was the largest loan funded by the bank at the time. That was about $65 million in financing. And one opportunity that still remains is for overhead lines from Paramaribo, in Paramaribo and Nikiri, 41 kilometers of high tension lines. So that's goods and works, international competitive bidding. We've also got a streetlight retrofitting and advanced metering infrastructure project going on there. And the advanced metering infrastructure goods contract that's still available 2021. I thought I'd just mention a couple of these things. Turks and Caicos Islands. This is a consulting services assignment. Integrated Solid Waste Management is the name of the project, which was approved in 2018. And TCI will shortly make these procurement opportunities available. So the main part of the work is about integrated solid waste management. So helping them to redevelop their integrated solid waste management strategy, look at feasibility studies and preliminary designs, and then moving on to detailed designs in some cases for some elements of work to improve the management of solid waste in TCI. That's the main thing. But because of the nature of the work, there's also an opportunity for an independent environmental and social impact assessment consultant as part of that project. Overall funding for that was about 672,500. So that's kind of the, no, that was the loan, a little bit more in counterpart to give you the total financing for that project.
William, I think you've given us a really good understanding of a lot of these projects.
I'm going to finish just now. I know I'm just less than a minute.
Okay.
So we've got one road safety capacity building, and I really wanted to mention these things because the consultants, we want to have consultants' interest, even though these projects might not seem large. So road safety management capacity reviews by consultants' qualifications. That was approved at the end of last year. Well, actually early this year. So we'd love to have some interest in that. And that's the end. So thank you very much. Apologies for going over, but every opportunity we get to make the market aware of the work we're doing and to attract interest. So beg your pardon. I'll be shorter next time. Thank you.
No worries. We really appreciate your passion and your work, and the insight actually that you provided us and the businesses on the line about the opportunities that exist in the infrastructure, and really depicting some of the real tangible opportunities. And you did a great job. I really appreciate that. There were some questions that had come up, some specifically around, I think that we have a bit of an idea that, Canada predominantly shines in consulting and professional services, but, where are some of the other areas, or maybe even some of the companies that have seen success in some of these projects? We're not going to get into that at this point. We're going to maybe we'll come back to that in the questions and answers, but I just thought I would kind of give you that, William, as a little bit of for information for you to chew on between now and the questions and answers. Next, we have Christopher Strong, who's going to speak to us. He's he's a sustainable energy analyst. He's in the energy efficiency and renewable energy operations, geographical coverage, and opportunities in sustainable energy. Christopher is an experienced process and project engineer with over 12 years of experience in the energy sector. He works with the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Unit of the Caribbean Development Bank since 2019. And I recognize Christopher as a regular attendee of the Caribbean Renewable Energy Forum. So Christopher, welcome. And if everybody, we welcome you, and a warm welcome to you. So please, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Craig. Good morning to everyone, or good afternoon to some, I guess. Now looking at the time. Can you hear me okay? Just give me a thumbs up, Craig, please. And can you see my screen? Sure. All right. So all protocols observed. I'll try and get straight into it. Conscious of the time. So as Craig said, my name is Christopher Strong. I'm working with the Renewable Energy Efficiency Unit here at the CDB. And I'll give you a bit of insight into what we do as this unit, as well as potential opportunities and a flavor for where future opportunities might come. So the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Unit, formerly known as the REEU, the primary objective is to implement the bank's energy sector policy and strategy. The main objective of the policy and strategy is the transformation of the energy sector to significantly increase energy security, sustainability, and enable economic growth through energy sector, sustainable energy type interventions. So the main focus is on promoting and supporting REEE development, as I said, towards a more sustainable energy sector with a focus on stable energy costs, increase energy security. As Doug mentioned, all of our borrowing member countries are highly reliant on imported fossil fuels. So anything we can do to reduce that reliance will ultimately, in the long run, stabilize and reduce costs, but also have a significant impact on energy security and resilience. We also would like to promote and support energy infrastructure investments and upgrades that provide cleaner, more reliable and resilient power supplies to our borrowing member countries. And to do that, we focus heavily on sector reform, promoting good or improved governance, as well as capacity strengthening to improve utilities or governments or even private sector actors' capability to make informed decisions around sustainable energy policies, investments, and strategies. So forgive my graphic art, but one of our main goals is to also ensure that renewable energy and energy efficiency is a cross-cutting theme within the bank. And this slide is to try and illustrate what we mean by cross-cutting theme. So it can be considered to be a key element or hub between several overlapping strategic areas of the bank and its member countries. So in no particular order, from the more obvious areas such as energy security, availability and affordability, increase reliability and resilience, and more energy independence by utilizing renewable indigenous resources, a focus on energy access and reducing energy poverty, especially in rural areas. Sorry. We want to work with the utilities to support a smooth transition to a sustainable and renewable energy generation, transmission, distribution. Decarbonization of several industries such as transport, heavy industry, manufacturing, etc. And then obviously there's no conversation around the climate dialogue without a focus or a mention of how renewable energy and energy efficiency plays a key role there. Operationally, I'm speaking to you right now kind of in a period of transition for our unit. We were originally located at inception around 2015 directly under our supervision of the Vice President of Operations. Because renewable energy and energy efficiency, the sustainable energy focus was quite new as a strategic direction for the bank. Although the bank had been involved in energy since its inception, there was an identified need for a specific strategic push into the sustainable energy space. So as such, it was positioned there. Now, as of March this year, due to the sustainable energy conversation being quite advanced and the need for the bank to adopt a more streamlined structure, we've been located under the Economic Infrastructure Division, as William had mentioned. So that will, the aim of that is to promote a more seamless transition between our core objectives as a unit, which is around capacity strengthening, opportunity identification, project preparation work, to then the core work of the EID, which is around appraisal, implementation, and ultimately supervision of infrastructure investment projects. So as you see highlighted, as I said, our goal is around the RE strategy, instrument development. That means funding instruments specifically suited towards the unique space that is sustainable energy and resilience. And then we utilize these for technical assistance for capacity strengthening, project identification, preparation, regulatory reform, governance strengthening, those type of things, and then resource mobilization, program management around those resources. And I'll get into what I mean by that shortly. So we work closely with various divisions and units within the project department and throughout the bank as a cross-cutting theme. Procurement, as you would have seen, there were several energy projects covered in William's presentation. So that speaks to how we as a unit would manage the procurement around the early stage type front-end work, whereas once the project gets to a certain stage of development, they're dedicated country officers within EID, but still separate to the unit, and that may change in the future, but who knows who would manage then the procurement of services, goods, and works associated with actual implementation of sustainable energy projects. So just a bit more detail on the four key focus of this unit. So as I said, capacity strengthening. So we would look at training, workshops, certification programs, study tours, and the like. Consultant support, expert assistance to perform either capacity strengthening for the bank or for our members, utilities or governments, or to perform studies around sectors or technologies or the like, to build awareness and public engagement, and then potential project coordinators or project managers as needed. On the other side, we do project identification and preparation work. So we would do project assessments, feasibility assessments, energy audits to identify opportunities for energy efficiency and upgrades, studies such as ESIAs, preliminary designs, and other technical support or advice on a project level. Strategy and instrument design, we monitor and as a unit track developments in the sustainable energy space, either on the technology side or the sector side, look at policy best practices and funding instruments most suited to achieving our objectives. And by doing this, we then would inform the bank's general strategy, the country strategies, which we develop as a bank for countries periodically and the like. Around resource mobilization and program management, one of my key roles within the bank is management of the Canadian support to the energy sector fund, which I've highlighted here, which is a 5 million Canadian dollar technical assistance fund, which has been instrumental in allowing us as a unit to be responsive to requests for support through all of our BMCs, foreign member countries, especially within the private sector, which is an area where we continue to be challenged with how to respond to and support in a timely manner. Other notable fund and resource pools we have, as seen here, is the Sustainable Energy for the Eastern Caribbean program, which promotes energy efficiency and renewable energy upgrades within the Eastern Caribbean countries. And then we have our GeoSmart initiative, which is, as the name suggests, focused on geothermal energy development. Again, that's quite focused around the Eastern Caribbean countries, which are those which have geothermal resources. So those geothermal funds would be for de-risking of geothermal projects, as well as grants and contingent recovery grants for drilling programs, and loans for facility development and resource acts and generation facilities. So just moving quickly into a high level overview of the types of opportunities we may see as a unit in the short term. So these ones would be potential opportunities for technical assistance projects for individual consultants. Some of them are a bit self-explanatory, but I'll go through any that are not. So as you see, as required, it means that we have, I have these in here to give a flavor of the type of expertise we would be looking for generally, or have looked for in the past. So electricity sector policy, regulatory support for countries. We sometimes get requests from countries for this type of support, and that would be on a as needed basis. And that would be supporting the development of policy or the regulatory institutions within the specific countries to help them to guide them on best practices. Similarly, we do quite a few sector or technology assessments, either on our own or by request from countries, and these would be focused on things like marine renewable energy, battery energy storage systems, smart grids, electric mobility, green hydrogen, biomass or biogas type development or strategies. Also, we have quite often engaged project coordinators to support governments or utilities for a specific project. For example, we have 2 project coordinators mobilized for separate geothermal projects due to a lack of expertise in country. So those type of opportunities exist. Project and program midterm or final, apologize for the spelling, final evaluations. So certain projects and programs, funding programs, we require that, or the donor institutions or partner institutions would require that we do independent evaluations to show how the fund performed against the original objectives and how the impacts, how impactful the funding was, and that's again on an as required basis. We do look for advisors. We will be looking in the near term for geothermal advisors, either to support in country or to support CDB. Development of operational frameworks and training plans. We actually have just closed this for St. Kitts to provide a body or a resource to support them with the development of their energy unit strategy, but we foresee that there will be other opportunities there. So I kept that there to highlight that. Consultant program managers. This is a role we may be considering for this year, which would help to, as I said, with the reporting and tracking of projects under our some of our funding programs, as well as engagement of evaluation consultants and whatnot. We will be looking for, there's a strong push towards the assessment of gender and social inclusion within the energy sector. So we will be looking for support there to provide assessments or strategy development for the sector for countries within regional or within the utilities as well. And then as we move towards advancing our marine renewable energy resources, having already done a preliminary study, we would be seeking for backstopping our capacity strengthening support in the offshore wind arena. Moving along to potential opportunities for firms, we do see that we will have further opportunities for energy audits and building condition surveys. We were hoping to have some of these more advanced late last year or early this year, but COVID has put a bit of a delay on some of these projects, but there's still some in the pipeline. Similarly, we've done quite a few assessments on opportunities for grid modernization, battery energy storage, and solar PV projects with 3 or 4 utilities quite recently. So the recommendations for those studies are with the utilities to accept and potentially move into upgrade projects. So we would be looking then to engage a firm to do the project preparation work, preliminary designs, and other type feasibility studies to move those towards a bankable project. Similarly, T&D design consultancy, we've have some assessments already done for certain countries, which would look at again, grid modernization upgrades, increasing resilience, especially around the distribution side of things. And we would then be looking to take those from a kind of conceptual to a more bankable type projects. Electricity sector policy and regulatory. I mentioned that as a opportunity for an individual, but also depending on the scope of the projects, it may warrant a multifaceted type of expertise, in which case we will look for a firm. We will be going to market shortly for a geothermal public information and a communications consultancy. So essentially to spread awareness on how the geothermal projects within the region and a country level are developing, what the risks, the benefits, and just try to ensure that all the information in the public domain is factual, and to give as much information as possible in a professional and strategic manner. So we'll be partnering with the OECS around this, so you can look out for that opportunity in the near term. We did a program in the Eastern Caribbean last year, which certification of PV installers and electrical inspectors. We're hoping that we can mobilize resources this year to widen that net and invite participants from other board member countries. So that's the goal of this next item in the list. We are also, if not already issued, about to issue a request for expressions of interest around a geothermal lender's technical advisor, which would be expert support to CDB. As we get more advanced in our geothermal project development around several countries, we would be seeking to have some further backstopping support there. We are working also with the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, as well as the CARICOM Secretariat, to engage a firm to help countries develop their integrated resource and resilience plans. CCRI and CARICOM have already established this in 4 countries, and we are mobilizing resources to expand that to all of our board member countries, perhaps in phases. So there will be opportunities there for a firm. We, as I mentioned, part of our role is the development of new instruments for supporting sustainable energy projects. So we are currently developing a request for expressions of interest also around the development of a blended financial instrument to support the investment in resilient sustainable energy projects, and that notice should be out within the next month or so. And specifically for Belize, we are looking at a biogas facility. So the feasibility study will require a firm with appropriate expertise. So that is in summary, in the near term, type of the type of opportunities that we would see from a consulting, technical assistance, capacity strengthening, and project preparation for the energy sector. So feel free to reach out if there are any of those opportunities where you or your firm may have the necessary expertise, as it's always good for us to have an idea where these expertise exists. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Christopher. Greatly appreciated. There were a couple of questions that popped up, and I'm sure there's probably going to be more that we'll follow up on once we finish. We've rounded out, starting with the infrastructure overview, and then the energy sector. And next, we're going to, and as the final speaker, we're looking at the social sector. And that's going to be our good fortune to welcome Dr. Martin Batiste. Dr. Martin Batiste is currently an education specialist with the Caribbean Development Bank. Immediately before joining the CDB in 2008, he was the permanent secretary to the Minister of Education in Grenada. And prior to that, he held posts as Chief Education Officer and Senior Education Officer in Planning and Development. We want to welcome Dr. Martin Batiste, and the floor is now yours, sir.
Well, thank you, Craig, and it's my delight to be here with my CDB colleagues to share with you some of the opportunities and a better understanding of how we are working in the social sector as a whole. So I'm here to speak about understanding and opportunities of how we work. So the social sector focuses on the bank's work in the non-economic infrastructure environment, and as Doug mentioned earlier, education, agriculture, social protection, poverty assessments. And we do have a basic needs trust fund, which is our signature poverty reduction program that is fully grant funded and is supported by our contributors that focuses on community-focused development and also community infrastructure. The three main sectors are education, water and sanitation services, and we do provide some other support in the area of livelihoods. So I'm going to share very quickly about education, which is the main sector that within which we operate in the social sector. And as you can see, it consists of the largest proportion of the social sector spending, over 75%, and for the last couple decades, over $500 million. We work in all sectors, as you see here, and all types of projects, capital projects, technical assistance, training. And the truth is that in the area of the technical assistance and consultancies, our friends from Canada have been quite successful in helping to support the work across the region and to get some of most of the opportunities in terms of what has been happening in terms of consultancies and training opportunities in CDB projects. What we do, we address all types of needs. Our education policy and strategy gives us wide latitude in what we can support. We are driven by the needs of the sector in our member countries. So whether it is strategic planning, teacher preparation, skills development, TVET, which is a major one right now, as you would understand. The issue of digital transformation of the education system is a big one. And of course, recently, we're looking at social protection and climate resilience school. Of course, the work in terms of physical infrastructure is always a big part of what we do. And as we work towards the SDG agenda, supporting learners at risk is becoming an important issue. Of course, because of COVID, you would realize that over the medium term, we anticipate that the whole issue of digital transformation of the education system is going to be an area that countries are going to be seeking support. ITC infrastructure, sure, but also in terms of learning management systems and digitizing curriculum content. We need to have some support looking at how to make sure that teachers are properly trained to to function effectively on an environment. We are not there yet. COVID has brought to the fore that that's an area of significant capacity deficit across teachers and managers. And those are areas that I'm sure over the next 2 to 3 years we'll be asking for professionals to come in and support the region and as well as individual countries. So all areas we focus in terms of support. The sectors, as I mentioned, basic education, this is a list of the countries where we do have projects in basic education, from Suriname in the south to Belize in the north. TVET has been an area that countries have made investments over the last 10 to 15 years. So we do have TVET projects currently under implementation, again, across the region. And even in tertiary education, of course, Guyana, Anguilla, and by the end of this year, we would be preparing a project, UE Digital Transformation, where the university is seeking to get both technical assistance and infrastructure ICT upgrade to further expand and enhance the digital footprint of the university as a global campus. So those are areas that we would be focusing on. I just want to quickly give you a sample of some of the projects that we have, and I just have four for illustrative purposes here. A BTVI enhancement project currently under implementation. And of course, although we look at upgrade of the workshops and labs, there are quite a few opportunities coming up over the next 6 months in terms of helping them with marketing and public awareness framework. There is some work to do in improving the student services, as well as we want to assist them with a national qualifications framework and the capacity for a tracer study system. So those are areas that I'm sure some of you here would be keen to express an interest in once the advertisements come out over the next 2 to 3 months. In the case of Belize, this is a project that we have ongoing, significant infrastructure work, but we do have some work to do in assisting the ministry with an early identification system for learners at risk. It's a framework that the ministry is keen to have in place so that as they expand the system to make sure that the needs of the vulnerable learners are in fact adequately addressed. In the case of Guyana, this is a project that was approved last December, really exciting work, looking at the hospitality and tourism sector. And this is to assist the ministry with the construction of the Hospitality and Training Institute, in addition to a childcare facility, to make sure that women in particular are able to take advantage of opportunities for training and also for work there. Notice a few of the consultancies that we have under that project to assist the HTTI with a strategic visioning plan, business continuity and enterprise risk management system, as well as public education and marketing framework. And there would be opportunities for training of the staff, both the managers and the faculty. As you know, Guyana is on the cusp of moving quickly ahead in terms of its economic expansion through the oil and gas opportunities, and the tourism sector is one that is quickly expanding to address some of those needs for economic competitiveness and to address the needs that would exist through the oil and gas industry. And the last one I want to share is Suriname, where we do have a project that we're currently implementing. And besides building 8 practical instruction centers, we've only have 2 completed, and the other the other 3 or 4 would be advertised soon. There are opportunities to help them with a competency-based education and training curriculum for lower secondary. We do have resources to look at the qualifications framework for Suriname, but also there's training opportunities for teachers as well. So this just gives you a flavor of the range of opportunities we have across the region. And as Doug mentioned earlier, those would be advertised on our website as necessary and UNDB, so you are able to indicate your interest in supporting those. New opportunities, again, a few projects that we have approved last year and some that we are in the process of approving this year. So basic education, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Haiti, Antigua, and Barbuda. I want to mention Haiti, and I think because of the French language, we are implementing a TVET project. There are opportunities to do some training of the instructors, but in our new program that we would be starting next year, we would be supporting the reconstruction of the Haiti Maritime Institute, both in terms of facilities and to help them with offering the program. So this exciting work, and we are hoping to approve that project by March next year. And so there's a lot of work, I think, and because of Canada and the French language, we're really hoping that our Canadian friends will be able to assist the Haiti as they move in that direction. At TVET, we do have some projects I mentioned here, and I mentioned the UE program project that we will be approving in June. So you can look for opportunities for that. In the case of agriculture, you've heard of the UK SIF program, and there are some opportunities there. I just have an example of a project we have with Cardi that's looking at the sweet potato value chain, which is an area that the region is trying to expand this particular area of agricultural endeavor. And I just have two of the technical assistants that they would be seeking to engage consultants over the next 2 or 3 months. Value chain analysis and business development cases for the sweet potato industry, as well as development of an agriculture extension multimedia aids. This is really to make sure that the farmers have within their grasp information that are accessible, so they are able to apply some of the industry best practice across the value chain process. In social protection, an area that we are now getting to in a fairly significant way, projects are being prepared for St. Lucia, Antigua and Barbuda, and Grenada this year. And these are some of the sample of activities I look at to digitize financial services. What COVID exposed is that when the pandemic hit and we had significant unemployment, then governments were trying to provide support to those who are vulnerable, and then they realized that because we did not have a proper system in order to facilitate payments, it became fairly cumbersome. So countries are willing to really modernize the whole engagement and to provide financial services. Monitoring, evaluation, psychosocial mental health capacity building, very important to deal with social protection and addressing the needs of those at risk. And of course, communication and public sensitization. So those are activities that would be in the 3 projects that we hope to approve this year. So you can look forward to that. And why are you stuck? Just give me 1 second. I have one more slide, I think, but let me go back because I'm not sure why it is stuck. But I'll just get back here. Okay. Okay, so I would end here because for some reason it has stuck. But this gives you a flavor of what we have in education. Here's technology for you. I just want to mention, of course, that I said earlier that the next few couple years are going to be important in education. And for what we've seen, how consultants have engaged in COVID, one of the things that has worked for the proposals that have come before us and that countries have in fact evaluated is where the consultants have shown that they are willing to maximize the technology tools in providing the consultancy services for the countries. As we mentioned earlier, because of COVID, travel is not that easy, but we've had some very successful and high quality technical assistance work done over the last 12 months for consultants who have never come to the region but are able to still deliver high quality products that countries, and frankly us, we at the bank, we were quite pleased with the quality of work. So I want to encourage you, don't be afraid to, in your proposals, to highlight how you're using technology in terms of consultation engagement. And I think my colleague from Barbados, Ms. Braffett, mentioned the value of having regional professionals as part of your team. That really adds value to the quality of your proposals as they are being evaluated, both at a country level and certainly when they come to us at CDB for review. So thanks again, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Martin. I greatly appreciate it. You know, I think that all of the speakers have covered a number of different issues, but many of them have talked about gaps where there's opportunities where you'd like to see greater expertise, a greater selection of expertise at the table in particular areas. Might be worth a follow-up for us to be able to understand that, and maybe there's an opportunity for us to follow up and to be able to identify companies in our jurisdiction that might be able to come forward to fill some of these gaps if they're not on the call here today. That's great. Really appreciate it. And I'm going to pass this over to Erin.
So we'll just take a couple of minutes for some questions. I did see a number of them coming through in the chat, and thank you very much to our panelists. They've been answering them as they've come in. But if anyone has anything that they would like to ask, you can use the Q&A or the chat, and we can address those for you.
Erin, it's Doug here. I didn't know. I don't know if Chris wanted to say any more on the question on the RE. There's a couple of questions actually on the REE.
Yeah, one was how can we offer our consulting expertise to the REU capacity strengthening project preparation? And I think that question came in before the end of your presentation. So I think your last slide with your contact information answered that question, saying here's my email, here's how you get in touch to find out more.
Yeah,
so.
sure. We would be happy to receive you know, company profiles or individual profiles highlighting the expertise. As I said, it's always useful to know where that skill sets might exist. So that's feel free to reach out to me. I think there's also the reee@caribbank.org. You can find that on our website as well. So either of those email addresses, that would be useful. I believe Doug mentioned the register of consultants, so you can also register there. That's useful as well for us. And then the other question around technical assistance studies. So as I mentioned, most of what we would be looking at as a unit is project preparation type capacity strengthening work. As you would have seen in William's presentation, many of those energy projects may have started in our unit and received the necessary project preparation and bankability type reinforcement to get it through to appraisal, and then it would be taken over by the Economic Infrastructure Division. So we're mainly focused around TA, so to speak, whereas the energy officers within EID on the country would be managing then the implementation type works.
Perfect. Thanks, Christopher. I don't see anything else coming in through the chat or the Q&A, so I think we were able to answer everything as we went through, but the slide decks will be shared as well as the recording, so that folks will have ways to get in touch with you guys if they've got any questions offline. So once again, thank you so much for attending. Thanks to all our panelists, and hope to see folks at our next two webinars. Reminder again, that survey will be coming out by email. Please give us your feedback. We really do appreciate that. Wonderful. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Greatly appreciate it.